Hey, Brian.
Hey, Dave.
Just checking. How are you?
Good.
All right, everybody, it's 4:30. I think we'll get started. Brian, can you do roll call?
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Petty,
Here.
Commissioner Kinzer,
Here.
Commissioner Rock,
Here.
Commissioner Pa,
She shows there.
Commissioner Pa. Oh. We can't hear you.
Dana, can you hear us? We can see you up there. We can't hear you. It's not showing she's muted. Well, I guess we take, I mean, we have a quorum even without her, but I take it she's there.
Presence is noted.
Oh.
Get the,
I just saw her flash back and forth with him. Mute and then not mute. Dana, can you hear us now?
Here. But she just can't make.
Well, if it comes to voting, we'll deal with
right.
abstains if we can't hear. At least we have a quorum. So, okay, with that, we'll get started. Ryan, just to verify, we have, everything's been noticed correctly and stamped correctly, all right? And also I want to remind the commissioners, if you have any ex parte or communications or any conflicts of interest with any of the items, please let us know at the time of that item is reviewed. Okay, we do not have the minutes, so those will be happening on the next meeting. And we do not have any preliminary plans review, so go down to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like pulled off and discussed separately? Okay, hearing none. Well, let me just double check. Dave and Liz, can you still say anything, just to make sure we're not missing anything with, because of Dana?
I'll make a motion that we accept
Okay,
the
we can hear.
consent agenda.
All right,
Second.
all right, wow, now we know we can
Got 'em both.
have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Had problems getting off
Aye.
mute. Aye.
Sing with the mic. Dana, was that you?
It was.
Okay. Did she call in?
I don't know.
Is that her number? Okay, well, motion is approved. All right, we'll move on to new business. 919 Flynn. Or Merlene Stark is here for Greg and Darla Roberts for application for design review.
Merlin Stark, I'm here for Greg and Darla McRoberts, at 919 Flynn.
Okay, Merlin,
Chairman Lyons?
yes.
Like to take motion to open public hearing before.
Oh, that's right. We gotta do that before the public. All right. Motion, we open a public hearing.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved. Open.
Carry on.
Okay, yes, Merlin, if you'd like to share with your presentation.
Yeah, so Greg and Darla have commissioned me to design in my house at 919 Flynn. We basically have a single family residence that's 5,883 square feet under roof, and that goes with your calculation as far as the square footage goes. We've met all of the setbacks, and the residence is basically a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath house with an exercise room above the garage. The materials for the house are very traditional wood siding, as well as a stone wainscot around the whole exterior. We've done a really good job, I think, of minimizing our impact on the site. We're not proposing the removal of hardly any of the older trees on the site. Let's see, the 2-car garage, and then we're also proposing a 1-car carport on the south side of the house. We did get comments back regarding the double garage, or excuse me, the double driveway that we had proposed for the house, and have no problem doing a single driveway into the house. We would like to do minimal landscape around the house to keep the surrounding area as natural as possible. The only thing that we may have is a path leading over to Ponderosa Park. As far as grading goes, I think we've complied to most everything on your grading requirements for the house, and we've also, shown infiltration areas for stormwater, as well as snow storage for the lot. I know that there were some calculations missing, and for sure we'll get those to you by the time of building permit. I can't think of anything else right now. Do you have any questions?
Hey, commissioners, any questions for Merlin? Okay, thank you. We'll go on to staff report.
Chairman Lyons, this is design review 24-01, 919 Flynn Lane for a single family residence larger than 5,000 square feet. The application was submitted on February 14th, noticed in the paper on the 14th, mailed on the 15th, and posted on the 15th. And you guys are going to make a decision on this tonight, theoretically. So open the public hearing. We've heard from the applicant. Now you're hearing from me. Then there'll be opportunity for public comment, then additional information, rebuttal, and final questions. Then you'll close the public hearing, deliberate, and make a decision on the item tonight. This application is at Flynn Lane, just at the south end of Ponderosa State Park. This site was subject to record survey application last year to combine two parcels within the Flynn Estate subdivision. So it's about an acre. It's zoned R4, and future land use plan calls for that. This is design review only application. So in order to grant design review, we must find that it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. I said it is that it is. It is not going to jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of the public. I don't see any reason why it would. The project conforms to the applicable requirements of zoning ordinance. With the conditions of approval in your staff report, the applicant or the proposal will be compliant with zoning. The analysis from my discussion, there are, like the applicant stated, 2 driveways shown on the site plan. We generally don't allow that unless there's a very good reason to do so. There's conditional approval to remove that. There's plenty of snow storage labeled on here, but they don't actually like circle it anywhere or identify the quantities. I'm confident that it can work, but they should do the exercise. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Right, commissioners, if any questions for Brian on this one? It seems pretty clear.
Yep.
A lot of space, extra space. It's not anything too tight, so. Okay, Morgan.
Hello, commissioners. So I only had a few comments on this application. They will need to upsize the existing meter pit that is there. Well, they have a few options for their meter pit, so it's just really figuring out if they're going to re-tap the main for a 1-inch meter or use the dual 3/4 inch meter that's up to the property line. They have either option, so it's just figuring that part out on the site plan. They did submit draft stormwater drainage reports, and it looks like it'll comply with our city drainage management guidelines. There's a lot of room to work with there. There's just a few items that need to be addressed before it can be finalized. A similar comment to Brian's, just to update the landscaping plan to show the 1 driveway entrance on Flynn Lane. I believe it's on the engineering plans as 1 driveway, so just making it all consistent. And then just making sure their driveway detail matches what we have for our standard details. Nothing too major on my side.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Morgan?
Morgan, I'm assuming that sizing the water meter and the drainage plan is part of the final engineering approval and the conditions?
It is.
Any other questions for Morgan? Or Brian at this point?
Brian,
Right.
is the house, Brian, is the square footage similar to the rest of the neighborhood?
Chairman Lance, Commissioner Petty, the neighborhood, there's not a lot of development specifically within the Flynn Estate subdivision. There was 1 house that is currently under construction. You can see in the site photos that I believe is roughly 5,000 square feet. It was a design review application that was in front of you guys last year. And then there's scattered houses throughout the area of all sorts of sizes.
Yeah, there's old ones, new ones, and a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian or Morgan at this point? All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing or public comment, excuse me. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? You may need to hit *6 if you're on the phone. Again, anybody online or on the phone wishes to comment? Is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment during this application? All right. Yeah, we'll close the public comment. Merlin, do you have anything other extra to add?
No, I appreciate, your input, and of course, all of the engineering items will be taken care of on our buildings permit submittal. I assume that will work for you all. And yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that.
Okay, great. All right, commissioners, any further questions for the applicant or Morgan or Brian before we close the public hearing? All right, I make a motion, we close the public hearing. Oh,
Can you
excuse
hear me now? This
Yes.
is Dana.
We can hear you. Welcome to.
Yay. Sorry
Yay.
about that. I can hear you all. Don't worry.
Great, glad to have you fully here. Dana, do you have any questions now that you can speak?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, with that, I make a motion, we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, all opposed? Hearing none. Public hearing closed. All right, commissioners, discussion. I mean, this seems pretty as clean as we can get for the most part. Couple of small items that engineering is going to be taken care of. It's all conditioned within the conditions of approval.
Mhm. My only concern was the two driveways, but it sounds like it's being handled. Nothing further.
I'm open for a motion.
I move to approve DR 2401 with the staff recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none. Motion is approved.
Thank
very much.
you.
Marlon, if you can continue working with staff, that'd be great.
You bet. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. All right, I want to move on to the next item, design review 2402, scenic route 2402. I make a motion, we open the public hearing on this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I
All right, open the public hearing. So who do we have here for Camp Pinewood for this application? Kyle, are you with us here? Oh, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you for the opportunity to present our project to you.
Real quick, Brian, do we need to move that over to not block the camera or?
Probably be good.
But-
Let's go over.
Yeah, sorry, we normally have it over there. I just realized it wasn't the normal spot.
I need to see my back.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I am Kyle Mashik. I'm the Operations Director of Camp Pinewood. And I want to bring to you the Maranatha Activity Center. Their proposed building is a gymnasium. It's consisting of a building 130 by 60 feet. The gymnasium size will be 100 by 60 feet with the front 30 by 60 to be an entrance with bathrooms, a nurse's station, coffee bar, things like that to be added. They are not in the plans because we haven't got that configured yet. We're wanting to build the shell of the building and the gymnasium currently. So this, we call it the MAC, but it's a Maranatha Activity Center, will be a athletic event center that will provide such activities as basketball, volleyball, pickleball, indoor sports, as well as meeting spaces for not only our guests at camp, but also be open to the community. In our nonprofit status, we are open for educational, religious, or scientific purposes, or any nonprofit activities. So that would allow us to extend the open times of this building to any activities for the community. And since McCall is in need of large venue areas such as gymnasiums, we thought that this would be a good benefit to the community as well. We are planning a 5-phase project. This is the first phase. Thus, we have to build each phase to be complete in itself, and then there will be additions to it. And that's why you have the first phase, which will just consist of the gymnasium and the entryway with the bathrooms. It will consist of a metal structure, metal framing. Our plans are to have R&M Steel out of Caldwell construct this building. You can see a building similar to this in Donley at Shadow Bible Camp. They have one that's a little bit smaller, but is consistent with what we're planning to build. Other than the east facing side of the building will be enhanced with natural elements, such as some of the material will be from the trees that are removed from the property where the building will be located, as well as some natural stone, artificial stone, and like materials on the east face of the building. Because the hill that this will be built on will have to be leveled, there should not be any need to change the drainage from the building, because it will basically take the place of the hill. The drainage will be a natural flow that's consistent with our 2016 proposal. However, we will have to enhance some of the impact areas before it goes into the river, just to keep any of the sediment from settling, which haven't been improved yet. And so they will be improved with this project. All the snow will be retained on site, and that, I believe, is what I have for a presentation.
Could you pull up a map and show exactly? I wasn't quite sure on the maps. It was someone's shop and different things, but I didn't see exactly where the gym sure was. I mean, I think I know, but if you could point out kind
Yeah,
of
so
where it was planned.
Yeah, currently we have a shop right here.
Okay, yeah.
This will be 40 feet behind the shop. And then in our 5th phase, because we'll have to build a new shop, we'll remove that shop, put a new shop in, and then this will become additional parking for that facility.
The one straight above it is
Right here. This is the new
That's-
Mather, not the activity.
okay. So it's going to face Mather.
Yeah.
Or
We're gonna face Mission.
Mission. I mean, it's facing Mission. So the front of it's Mission. So the sides are within the bill. Okay, that's
So our additional phases will be off to the side, both sides. Thus, we won't be putting any wood siding or anything on that side of the building at this time, because we're doing additions to the building in the near future.
And then you're just doing bathrooms right now, but you're good with the hookups with the sewer district. That's not,
We actually have been planning to upgrade to a 2-inch line. We currently have a 1-inch line because we have plans for 3 large cabins in the near future. And this would put us into a 1.5-inch. Well, actually, we're currently needing to go to a 1.5-inch line. This will keep us within a 1.5-inch meter, but if we add another cabin, it'll put us in a 2-inch meter. And so we thought we should just go to a 2-inch meter right off the bat.
for the water, but you're good with the sewer in the sewer district with the
Yes.
hookups. You got everything
Yeah,
you need.
with the sewer district, there's the main sewer line right here. So we will be able to come from the south side of the building to that main sewer line, about 600 feet.
What are the other 5 or the other 4 phases, I guess, of the whole?
Sure, we want to add a 30-foot addition to the south side of the building, which will consist of shower houses and bathrooms for a camp facility. And then the north side will be storage and a new kitchen. And then the next phase will be removing of the shop, building of a new shop, and addition of parking area.
Is the new shop going to be in the approximate same location?
We are still debating about where that shop should be located on camp. So that's for the board to decide and then present to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Is your driveway entrance gonna change at all?
We do not see that our driveway would change. The only thing that might change would be we might have to put a loop in when we add the kitchen for deliveries and things like that around between this building and then back out, but not the entrance onto Mission Street.
So they'd come in, you'd pull in the driveway and then hang a left to go into the future parking, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, there's a driveway right here that would go into that future parking.
gotcha. Okay.
Currently, we have large parking area back here, but this is where we plan to build the cabins, so that will have to come before we can build the cabins.
This is David. Your drawings show a new driveway coming off Mather. You will,
No,
that's,
Is that a future phase?
no, this is already there. This is an old drawing of
Oh.
what we added to this.
Okay,
And so we put that onto that drawing. So that is already there. Mather is completed.
okay.
all right.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are you planning to, you said you're gonna put kind of natural finishes on the east side because that's facing Mission. Not doing that on the north and south until you do your next phases? Are you
Correct.
planning to do kind of
Yeah,
natural
we're
finishes
planning to
then?
do the stone around the base of it.
Okay.
And some enhancements on.
But just for the near term, just leave it to metal siding then? Okay.
Because that will have to be removed for the next phase.
Yep.
Hey, commissioners, any other questions for the applicant at this time?
Yeah, yes, I had a question about parking. So I know you mentioned that, there's future, moving the shop or replacing it and changing out the parking. But for this first phase, what's your plan for the parking?
There is a large parking area to the northeast of this building. And that's an area where we plan to build cabins. So we will have to put the parking in front of where the current shop is at prior to building those cabins. So that's why that will fall into that phase, because we have a large parking area now, but it'll need to be moved when we start into those phases.
Gotcha, I'm tracking. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions?
You mentioned that other community partners would be able to use the facility. Is that, you communicated with Parks and Rec or?
Yes, we actually had Mike Wolf out and we walked the project with him, walked the property to talk about the trees that'll be removed and the impact on the community, as well as the possibility of using this facility during the week when we don't have guest groups at camp. And he seemed very excited about those possibilities. We also have one of our staff's spouse is an assistant teacher at the school district, and the teachers and the principal are very excited about having another venue in camp where they could use it, as well as I've talked to an Association of Christian Athletes director in Boise this week, and he said if they had one more facility here, they would be able to bring some camps, some athletic camps to the community, having multiple venues to be able to do those. So he was excited about it as well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, commissioners, any other questions? Okay. Now, thank you. Brian, staff report.
DR 2402 and Scenic Route 2402 for TBD New Mission Street for a new gymnasium at the Camp Pinewood. The application was submitted on February 20th, noticed in the newspaper on the 15th, mailed on the 19th, and posted on the 15th. You guys are the deciding body on this application. Hearing and heard from the applicant and engineering. Then there'll be opportunity for public comment, then additional information as needed. Close the public hearing, deliberate, and instead make a decision. This application is for a gymnasium facility of approximately 7,800 square feet, located adjacent to the North Mission Street scenic route. It is substantially set back from that, so not likely to impact on the visual quality of the scenic route, but it is there. It's currently zoned R8. Future land use plan is medium density residential. Again, generally in conformance with the comprehensive plan, matches future land use, and the a gym, a recreation area facility is identified on their master plan associated with CP 1705. It is at a different location. I'll get to that in a little bit. Not going to jeopardize health, safety, or welfare. Just to ensure that it is unlikely to have any substantial impact on property, adjacent properties or the community at large. Is along scenic route, but is set back substantially. Yeah. Is that. I left the meeting.
You left the meeting?
And yet I'm still here. Yeah, back to life. Okay, so the one item staff analysis, as mentioned, the master plan for this camp shows the recreation facility up closer to Mission Street. They, in their planning for this, determined that setting it back behind the shop on top of the hill was a better location. Seems reasonable and not a substantial enough modification to warrant changing the whole master plan. Generally in conformance with their master plan. With that, I will stay in for any questions.
Commissioner, do you have any questions for Ryan? Okay, Morgan.
Great. Hello again. So this one, I have been working with Kyle quite a bit to figure out the water infrastructure, so the water meter sizing. And we've come up with a 2-inch meter would probably be the best to future-proof this for the future phases, just so that they don't have to keep going back to the main and upsizing. So we're working on that. I just needed a few more documents from him and I got those in an email. Let's see. And then they have their stormwater report that was prepared in 2016 that was approved. And then I just had some additional questions as it relates to this project and some of the grading around that building. And that was really all I had, just to make sure it all matches with what's been previously approved.
Commissioners, any questions for Morgan?
Not for me.
Okay, with that, we will go to the public comments. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? If you're on the phone, you may, and you're muted, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Again, anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment? Is there anybody here in the audience that wishes to comment on this application? Okay, hearing none, we will close the public comment. Is there any information you want to provide? No.
I have a quick question for you. How is it going to be finished on the inside? I mean, obviously a gym floor and stuff, but.
Yeah, probably via the microwave or microphone. Answers.
I hate to have you walk up because probably short answer.
Yeah.
Buck a lot every day. So the inside of the gymnasium will be finished with a lower hard wall to protect the insulation from, athletic activities and young people from bouncing off of it and destroying it. With the upper part, we'll have a finished insulated, it's kind of a fiber insulation, white. The front 30 by 60 feet will be finished with it'll have a hardwood floor type surface as well as wood walls. The upper part we propose will be a meeting space above that, but all those plans are complete yet. But that's our plan, is to make that upper meeting space, because the ceiling will be about 27 feet tall, so we can utilize that for our meeting space. It'll be kind of entrance and welcome center area for the building.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so commissioners, any other questions for the applicant or staff before we close the public hearing on this item? All right, with that, I make a motion, we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Public comment is closed. Discussion.
Sounds like a needed project, really.
Yeah.
Lacking gym space and that sort of ideas and things.
And it's kind of already sort of all been gone through in their previous conditional use planning with some slight modifications, but I mean, everything seems to fit.
Yep.
And my first concern was a blank wall, make sure that was lined up with the road, so we don't see that, but they got the nicest side going, and
right.
With the other additions, that'll change the sides anyway, and it's within that project. I've been in there many times. Nobody's gonna see it unless you're inside there.
Right.
Really. So it sits quite a ways back from the road. Yeah, it seems to fit with the overall project and everything they've been doing for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no concerns for me.
So,
I move to approve DR 2402 and SR 2402 with staff recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion is carried. Items are approved. Thanks. Wow. All right, let's see. So we'll go down to design review 2403 and shoreline 2401. I make a motion, we open the public hearing on this item.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All right. Yeah, and then do we have Matt, again, Nudity?
Richard Whitlock.
Richard Whitlock, okay.
Good afternoon, Richard Whitlock, Chrysalis Architecture, 134 South 5th Street, Boise, Idaho. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we're here today asking for design review and shoreline review of 5 lots between Lake Street, Mill Street, and adjacent to, right next to First Street. There's on the 5 lots, what we're planning to do is a mixed-use townhome development where the retail spaces, the mixing, if you will, would be facing towards Lake Street. Sedge here, basically facing towards the marina. And that is the lower part of the site in terms of the grading. And then on the upper 2 floors above the retail spaces, we would have the single-family residences. So 5 retail spaces and 5 residences. In terms of the grading, as you would probably imagine, Mill Street is the high side of the property. Lake Street is the low side of the property. We're anticipating our residential driveways being accessed from Mill Street. Those units would carry all the way through the building. So you'd have the front doors along Mill Street, and then you'd have what would be patio and living spaces as you move towards Lake Street. Our height all complies with the limitations within the zone and the shoreline area. We are fully compliant with all the setbacks. We've we've worked fairly extensively with staff to try to resolve how we, make these units nice and interesting and really provide a pleasant or an interesting architectural aesthetic while still being able to capture the views of the lake and whatnot. Right now, the site is vacant. Outside of what's being used is a surface parking for the marina. There's currently a 75 by 25 foot easement on, thank you, Brian, on lots 3, 4, and 5. Within that 25 by 75 foot easement, which is kind of why you see the building setback, is a couple of fuel tanks that are below grade. They're currently covered with a concrete slab that's kind of identified by this green area here. So logically, the tanks are directly beneath that concrete slab area. In terms of access around and through the site, we're anticipating new curb, gutter, and sidewalk around basically all 3 sides. The north side is basically it's adjacent to an existing single-family residence, so we wouldn't anticipate any street improvements there. So we would have sidewalk all the way around, driveways along Mill Road, and then through the site itself, we would anticipate access through from Mill Road that would go basically between the buildings. So the buildings are separated here to allow stairs for access from whether there's parking on Mill Road in the future or in the driveways. You'd be able to access this retail area down below. In terms of the landscape areas, we've really tried to be compatible with the streetscape standards. We're compliant with all the zoning requirements, all the height requirements for planning. We've got adequate area for snow storage with our landscape areas. You'll see this area here. We're planning for storm drainage and retention on the high side of the site as well as on the low side of the site. There would be on-street parking along Lake Street. Maybe can jump to the elevation. So these are a few views of the building. These would be along the Lake Street side. You'd see the separation in the building here, just for context. So we'd have a plaza space on the lower level to access the retail areas. And then residential balconies on levels 2 and 3, kind of facing that side to capture the views of the lake. Maybe go to the residential side. So you'll notice on the residential side, these buildings they're greatly reduced in terms of overall scale. You have your garage doors, your building entries, and then more of a reduced version in terms of height of the overall building facade. So with that, I stand for any questions. I think we've basically complied with all the requirements, worked with staff to try to address all the zoning issues and the setbacks and the building heights. And we do have a report from engineering that basically we would end up working through as we get to the building permit.
Quick question on the upper level where you have the buried propane tanks. It appears, at least in the drawings, you just have the regular cap over them. Is there going to be more to protect it? Because it appears to be right next to and in between driveways for somebody to either plow into them with the plow or drive into them, or.
So the fueling tanks are actually on the lower level. They're right.
No, not those tanks. The propane tanks that originally had above ground and are now below ground on the driveway side or the garage side, showing propane tanks for each property.
So these would basically be underground and within the landscape area. Yeah. So.
Okay, but they have the metal cap that's over top of them that they can open, and it appears pretty close to the driveways.
Yeah.
Are you gonna have more of something to protect them if there's somebody's plowing and they're over a little bit or something? I'm just thinking they'll get torn into.
I think that's a good suggestion that we work something into the landscape, and then if we need to introduce some wall or basically some barrier there to protect that, I don't see any reason why we couldn't incorporate something along those.
I can just see people not paying attention and running into them and over them. I mean, even though the tank's safely below, it still could cause.
Definitely agree, yeah. But we can absolutely incorporate something like that.
What's the plan for where the actual fuel tanks for the marina are? What is your plan to do on top of those?
So right now, according to our lease agreement and the way the easement is structured, is that the concrete has to remain. We can't do anything artificial or superficial over the top of that without agreement between the tank owner and ourselves. And so in the short term, we would anticipate just leaving that alone as the way it is, because we don't want to disturb it any more than it needs to be. But around it, we would try to enhance that area with paver systems and things to try to integrate the sidewalk with the adjacent grades and the building elevations. Yeah. In terms of what's happening below grade, our building, this let's just say diagonal hatched area represents the boundary of the easement. Our building is off of that easement, and basically the way that the structure of this particular building is that all of the let's just say surcharge or structural loads would be brought below the tank, so there really wouldn't be any impact on the tanks themselves from our building structure anyways.
So there going to be any extra, I don't know, protections or anything? Because when you're excavating around those tanks, is there any extra stuff that's going to be required or for safety wise, so you don't interfere with those tanks being that close?
There's certain guidelines and regulations that have to be followed when you're working in and around fuel tank areas. And so a lot of those requirements are what we plan on implementing with this particular construction. Obviously we don't intend to damage the tanks or impact them in any way. And we certainly don't want that even from our own project perspective, right? But we absolutely are going to take the necessary precautions that are going to be required there. And it's going to involve integration with the owner of the tanks and making sure that everybody's understanding of what's going to happen in the sequence and schedule and whatnot.
Because we did receive some communication as part of the record that they've been trying to discuss, and apparently it hasn't been discussed, but there is plans to talk with them and coordinate however needed.
It's misleading in that letter because actually we have communicated with them. We've actually given them responses to some of their questions. And then we actually followed up and we didn't get a response back from them. So we've tried to have that discussion, and we'll continue to have that discussion. We don't have, it doesn't benefit us at all to not try to cooperate. So we have every intention to do so.
Good. No, that's it. Commissioners, any other questions for Richard at this time?
This is Dave. Your drawings on page 241 show a plaza over the top of those fuel tanks along with parking. I question how you're going to allow a fuel truck in there to fill those tanks if you don't have some sort of working agreement with the owners. And then there's been a comment on the driveway on the farthest north. Do you have any way of remedying that?
Let's go to the image that you might be referring to there. It's a perspective. Basically, what we're showing there is what we anticipate to be the inevitable sort of long-term projection for that plaza. We understand that there's going to be some time in between as to when those tanks remain and if they get removed, but this is what we envision for the finished version of the plaza. In the short term, however, along Lake Street, there's parallel parking there that's going to be provided, and I think that's where the discussion with the tank owner, we would allocate a certain time that would be compatible for both of us to figure out when those tanks need to be fueled. But the proximity to those tanks and where where that on-street parking would be, would absolutely accommodate the needs of being able to fill those tanks up. And then in terms of, what was your question about the north side, Commissioner?
The driveway on the farthest north appears to be too close to the setback.
Who revised it?
Yeah, I think we, Commissioner, I think we have since revised that from maybe something that you've seen that was a prior version. In one of our initial concepts, I think actually when we submitted the application, we did have the driveways that were a little closer together and they didn't provide the necessary separation. And I think we've since satisfactorily addressed that, at least in our workings with staff. So I think right now, unless there's something that I'm not aware of, I think that we're okay meeting the code requirements with the driveway design as currently proposed. Maybe Brian can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll let Brian update us on that. It's helpful to have drawings that that we see that are actually what you want to build sometimes.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Richard at this time?
Yeah, I do have one. What's your plan for snow storage?
So in between all of the lots, we have designated the snow storage areas. And then I also think we're making some contribution to having it trucked off site. But we are allocating some of that snow storage on site currently.
Okay.
Any other
Richard, it looks
Oh, go ahead.
your drainage basins are all on the Mill Street side, like water's gonna run uphill. How's that? How do you intend that to work?
No, Commissioner, actually, we have two sets. We have drainage on the north side, on the Mill Street side and on the Lake Street side. So there would be some drainage on the lower level. Really in the areas where the tank is not, and as we're providing the appropriate separation, that's really the intention for the pavers themselves, is that they act as a storm drainage and retention area.
But you're showing that over the fuel tanks again, right?
Again, we're showing that in such a way that this is what we anticipate for the future, long-term vision. Right now, given that the tanks are there, we have enough area and we're using as much area as we can for the snow storage outside of those. So anything that's added later on would be over and above what would be required.
I guess I'm curious why you think the fuel tanks are going away.
Well, there's a lease in place, and the marina might not always exist in its current situation. And even if it doesn't, our project has accounted for those tanks remaining in place outside of any of the planting areas that are placed on top of it in our what would be our final version of the site.
Okay, I really don't see the marina going away, but we'll let you go on with that.
Okay, any other questions for Richard? Okay, thank you, Richard. We'll get back to you on this. All right, Brian, staff report.
Lines, 2403 and shoreline 2401. On East Lake Street. Desiring a shoreline application submitted February 20th. Posted in the newspaper on the 15th, mailed on the 18th, and posted on site on the 18th as well. You guys are a deciding body on this. All the uses are permitted within the Central Business District, and they are not needing any code deviations. So we open the public hearing. I heard from the applicants. Now you go for me. Public comment will be the next. Then additional information, you'll close public hearing, deliberate, and make a decision. The site is a 0.42 acre parcel. I missed updating the size of it, but it is roughly 25,000 square feet of new space over 3 stories. It is located next to the boat launch in the Mile High Marina at Lake and Fur Street. The commercial zone has specific design review standards that we'll go through. The required to be at a pedestrian scale. The buildings have variation in the wall planes. There are 2 different buildings. The larger building includes a stairway access point from lake to mill that will break up the facade a little further and keeps pedestrian scale. Includes some balconies. There's quite a bit of variation in building materials. The larger building is set back relative to the other. I've been kicked out of the meeting again. And got pedestrian oriented street front or storefronts, I should say. All the storefronts are less than 25 feet wide. There's this one that has 2 storefronts adjacent to each other, roughly 50 feet worth of space. There's substantial glass on all the storefronts. There's some obvious front doors of the buildings, particularly on these ones that include the wood elements around the doors to highlight the entrance. The requirement for styles consistent with the McCall area. This one is a little bit more modern, a little different style than what you would typically think of as a traditional McCall style. It does, however, incorporate substantial wood and stone elements into the design. Has covered entryways. The balconies on the 2nd floor. Has a flat roof to retain snow. I think is generally consistent with McCall style, although it is, like I said, quite a bit different than what you would typically expect. The snow country design, again, has covered entrances and a flat roof to hold snow. The actual snow load requirements are determined at time of building permit. There are no harshly contrasting color combinations or blank walls. So then the general design review standards, it matches the comprehensive plan, zoning, and future land use map. It's infill, it's mixed use, includes pedestrian improvements. Again, there's nothing that is likely to jeopardize health, safety, or welfare of the public. It conforms with applicable zoning requirements as conditioned. The project will have no substantial impact on adjacent properties or the community at large. It is what has been envisioned for the downtown area for a good long while, and what was expected within the shoreline and environment zone. It will unlikely to have unreasonable impact on visual quality or setting of the water quality. It is an improvement on an unimproved dirt parking lot. It is not directly on the shoreline, and it's set back, and stormwater management practices will be required to be followed. As discussed earlier, the plans that are in your packet had the northernmost driveway right up against the property boundary. There's typically a 5-foot setback requirement. That appears that they have made some modifications based on the plans that were presented by the applicant. Fuel tanks, that as discussed, there's a 75-foot by 25-foot easement area for the fuel tanks. The building nearest is supposed to be set back at a minimum of 3 feet from wherever the actual location of the fuel tank is or outside of the easement, whichever is greater. We don't know the specific location of the fuel tanks at this point. We've been working with building official and fire district on making sure that when it comes time for a building permit, that those are located and the correct precautions are followed. And there is a condition of approval to develop an operations and maintenance plan between the developers of this property and the easement holder, which is Mile High Marina, so that they can come to agreements on how it would actually be fueled, what times of day, what street furniture and things like that can be placed on top of the easement area and so on. I intentionally left that condition fairly vague. If there are specific items that you would like addressed, please motion. The applicant has indicated that the original 5 parcels from the McCall first edition plat are still valid and that this has been combined for tax purposes. Entirely plausible. We just want to see a title report to verify that or some documentation. Snow storage, it's required 2,500 roughly square feet. And they have identified roughly 400 square feet on these very dense types of developments where it's just not feasible. We have options for them to provide documentation that it's going to be trucked off somewhere else and stored. So there's the condition of approval. They either figure out some storage on site or provide us documentation that it is going to be handled elsewhere. The bicycle parking, they have identified adequate short-term parking, but need to show 3 more long-term bike parking spaces. That I will stand for any condition or question.
I know they're doing the sidewalk there. Is there in there? I know there's several homes between that and the glass house. Excuse me, but with that getting closer to that, is there any thoughts of doing any more along there?
Yes, so we have been taking these on one at a time and getting escrow agreements between individual property owners as they have developed, or construction as up to the developer. And yeah, so we have a decent amount of like streets, at least somewhat paid for at this point. And so it'll just be a matter of finding the additional funding or waiting for additional development to occur before we.
So you're looking into that, seeing if there's an option to continue this as they're doing this one, because that's a pretty good section getting that direction between that and the glass house. There's not a whole lot. I mean, as far as it, maybe that hadn't paid, but okay, that's getting looked into. That's good. Okay.
Are the retail spaces just purely that, or they're kind of like restaurant, kitchen kind of things?
The site or the floor plans left it as fairly basic. There's a general open space and a bathroom in each one, but then they could certainly add kitchens and things like that in the future.
Yeah, we have to go with the health department codes with grease traps and all that other stuff at that point.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty hard to retrofit after the building's built, I would imagine.
Big plaza area and all that lends itself very well to outdoor seating, things like that. But at this point,
At this point, there's no plan, so.
Brian, this is Dave. What is the total height of the building from Lake Street?
It is within the 35-foot height requirement all the way through. There is a stairwell on the southern building that is above 35 feet that is exempted in our building height definition. It doesn't get a whole lot above 35, but it is a little lower.
Everybody has to know.
Which stairwell is that? One on the north side, you said?
But The building height is the more restrictive of finished floor elevation or pre-construction grade. This flat dashed line is finished relative to finished floor. This sloping line is pre-construction grade.
Gotcha.
So there's a chimney here and then it's stairway access.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Brian at this point? All right, Morgan.
Well, before we do, sorry, I was late on the mute button. I have a very silly question. As you can see in this elevation right here, they do have a sign. Does this application include that signage or would that be approved separately?
That's a good question. I typically put in a statement that no signage is permitted with this application and will require a future sign permit application, but I failed to get that conditional rule in there. So they're adding that as well.
Thanks.
But by not mentioning it and having no signed plan, there's nothing.
Nothing there. All right, Morgan.
Great. Hello again. So we've reviewed this application and I sent out my engineering review letter. It's about 3.5 pages of some items that we need to work through. There's 3 major items that I think are kind of risky to get entitlements before, just like some of the other projects that we've seen that are larger in scale. So the hydraulic model hasn't been completed right now. It has been initially completed, but further input from the fire department and our consultant team is needed. The initial assessment does identify that improvements to the water mains will be warranted to achieve the required flows and pressures that we are assuming at this point in time. So that'll include building a main and First Street to connect Lake and Mill and upsizing the Mill Street water main, but that length hasn't been determined yet. So that's one of the inputs that I'm waiting on. But there will be some water improvements that need to occur. They did submit a traffic memo and it's pretty general, but it's kind of hard to account for traffic impacts in a more urban area. That's our pedestrian zone for Lake Street. So we still have a few conversations, I think, on that and regarding Mill Street in general and its condition and how it'll fare through construction of this. And if they're building water mains, what that looks like for that pavement section. From what has been submitted, the stormwater design does not meet our drainage management guidelines at this time. Commissioner Petty pointed out that there's some drainage basin items, and some of those were part of my concerns as well. There is a large drainage basin on the east side of the property along Mill Street, and the narrative explains that it's the roof drains that'll drain into that basin, but it does not propose pre-treatment for the drivable surfaces or the plaza areas. And it's just to follow the historic flow, which we're not okay with that right now. It needs some kind of pre-treatment because it's so close to the lake, that storm system, and verifying the storm system has capacity for these increased flows. This is also a pretty large drainage that comes through here. It's basically all the drainage you see outlets here. So confirming that it's sized properly or that acreage. This. Those were a few of my high level comments, but I think it can all be worked through. But just stating it's risky on their end to get some entitlements before having some of these larger picture items considered and figured out.
I noticed we had some kind of late comments coming in from the fire department that required sprinkler system.
Yes. So that'll be part of that hydraulic model, identifying what they need for those pressures and flows for that internal fire suppression system. And that's in my report also. And then verifying with the fire department if if 1,500 gallons per minute from the fire hydrants are sufficient, or if it needs to be 2,500 gallons per minute for the mixed use. I know for some of the mixed uses, we try to aim for that higher gallons per minute just so that there's more water and pressure available for these projects. And just verifying what they're comfortable with, since there are quite a few hydrants around.
Pull it out of the.
Yeah, and they'll have some fire suppression on the interior, so figuring out that balance and what that'll look like in the water model.
They did have in their plans fire sprinklers already, correct? I thought I saw that in there. Pretty sure I did, didn't I? You already, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yep, but just getting those flows and pressures. Yeah. To make sure that that they're supported adequately.
You mentioned that, the drainage from Woolley kind of comes through here. Where does that go?
Sure.
How does it reach the?
No, if you have an aerial map.
Yeah, like that's her map that you can satellite view in.
I mean, just generally, like, is it
Yeah. So it's
north of the property, or?
I believe it starts in Spring Mountain Ranch and comes down to Woolley, and then it has that channel on the south side of Woolley that meanders to the north side on those undeveloped properties at Woolley and Davis. And then there's that pedestrian pathway that works through there. That's also a drainage easement. Brian's gonna pull up the stormwater layer.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't know where the outlet was for it.
Yeah, so it's all connected there. And then we have a system of stormwater pipes through the improved First Street and I think that's Greystone Drive and McCall Avenue. And that stormwater pipe is connected on the north side of this property, which was one of my comments, is to show that stormwater pipe. The yellow lines on the screen are the stormwater mains, and the blue boxes are inlets into that system. So verifying that they have capacity for all of this, because there are a few spots in the report where they propose tying into this system. So making sure it's all meets the requirements of the drainage management guidelines. And there's some outlines in there on, depending on the drainage size, how large the pipe needs to be and what size of storm it needs to accommodate. Yeah.
Morgan,
I was just gonna say there are some pre-treatment structures right before the marina, but that's I don't know if it's sized for this.
Right.
So making sure that everyone is treating their own runoff before plugging it into our system is just a way to help ensure to keep our source water clean.
So that stormwater drain on the north side of the lot is it going to be safe while they're building this building? It looks like they were right up on the property line.
That was one of my comments on their civil plans, was to identify where that stormwater main was so that we can make sure there's proper protections for that and that it's not damaged or disrupted during construction, or if it is, what their plan is to reroute the water while it's happening, while construction's occurring.
I don't think I've ever seen so many red lines in your engineering report. Are you getting any responses?
They have sent, I think this is a second version of the first report that was submitted preliminarily when Brian and I look over reports and applications. So this is an updated report, but I know the applicants try to balance engineering before entitlements and engineering after, so that balancing that risk and cost. But I would say it's not uncommon for me to have red lines at this stage in the process.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Morgan at this point?
I do have one more question for you, Morgan. You kind of highlighted at the very beginning of your report there was kind of three main things that are hanging out there for you. The hydraulic model, the stormwater plan, and I believe you said that a traffic memo was submitted but not completed. Is that correct?
The traffic memo was submitted and it's more of talking about proportionalities to improvements. And figuring out what that traffic looks like on Mill Street, since they are proposing to improve the Lake Street frontage and then they have some improvements on First Street. So figuring out what Mill Street might need and if it's proportional to the impacts that are happening on the project. Because we can only really ask for what's proportional to the projects.
And you guys haven't had those discussions yet, I'm assuming, okay.
Not yet. This is kind of a new area for traffic studies where it's kind of built out, but more pedestrian focused.
Mhm.
Unlike other projects that we've had in the past.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Morgan? Ryan at this time? All right, with that, we will open up for public comment. I want to remind everybody you have 3 minutes to comment. If there's other people that spoke before you and they've said the same thing, please kind of limit and just say that you agree with them instead of adding everything or saying everything again. So with that, we will go, anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment? Don and Beth.
Yeah, this is Don and Beth. We live.
Excuse me, Don, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. If you could just, I'll state your name and address as well, please.
Okay, it's Beth and Don Gray. We're at 1303 Mill Road in McCall. And we're in those townhouses directly opposite the development. And, you know, as we talked with the, we actually sent Brian our questions that we had, and I think he was able to answer those, our concerns. But as I've looked at this, is one of the questions I have, is that pedestrian walkway for all use, or is it just for residential use for the owners there? That the two walkways that they have through to access Mill down to Lake Street?
Okay, we'll have the applicant answer that once it gets back to him.
Okay, and the other one would be, you know, obviously parking is always been an issue and we have limited space there. And as you know, during high season, we actually put out some no parking banners along there to keep people off our grass because my understanding is there's no parking allowed on Mill Road. And he made some comment about street parking, and I don't know if that was in reference to Mill Road also, because it looks like it between driveways. I'm not sure there's a, you know, it looked to me, I don't have the plans in front of me, so I don't know if there's 20 feet between each one of those driveways. I don't know if there's, or if they're anticipating parking along there, but the right of way is, I don't think it's wide enough to allow for street parking on either side. And then the future development along that, as far as would there be curb and gutter proposed along our side of the street. And one of the big issues that I would have during construction is, you know, construction activity, you know, blocking our access. And we installed new water meters that are right down on there. That one of the reasons we have people try to stay off that grass during the summer is they'll start parking right on the meters. And so we just would like some reassurance that during construction that they wouldn't be allowed to access anything over on our side. But that's, you know, that's really, you know, I think we submitted all our questions. Oh, the height, you know, I guess, you know, if, as far as the height on your diagram, you showed that there was a chimney and part of the one structure up above that, according to that line, physically is above that height limitation. Is that correct? And then, you know, I guess hold to that 35-foot height limitation. But that's really, all I have is it's always the parking issue and then how you access the boat ramp. And Brian, we talked about that. Future ideas on that. We're just assuming that hopefully doesn't turn into a turnaround for, people wanting to access the commercial site, cars that don't have a trailer attached to them. So I think that's a circulation problem, traffic problem that probably, in my mind, should be addressed in the traffic study as far as what they anticipate along that boat ramp area. But our concerns are really more of during construction activity, making sure that we don't get blocked on our and long-term parking. But that's really all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Don.
All right, thank you all.
All right, is there anybody else online or on the phone that wishes to comment? Again, if you're on the phone, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Anybody online or on the phone wishing to comment? All right, anybody here in the audience wish to comment? I'm guessing there's a couple.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Steve Milliman representing the Mile High Marina, specifically Sam Worley, the majority owner of the marina. And Brian, if you could put that site plan up. We are here not to oppose the project, but to ask that you table this until a number of critical issues have been clarified as to the feasibility of the project. Just the issues addressed by the city engineer alone should be, in my opinion, addressed before the entitlement is granted. And I think that's what the city engineer was referring to, is once the entitlement's granted, it's been granted. I want to remind you, this is not just design review, this is shoreline environs review. And as you well know, our shoreline environs ordinance prohibits any construction activity that might foster the introduction of pollutants into the lake. Now, the marina has spent the last several months answering a detailed list of questions posed by the city council to assure that the marina expansion will not jeopardize the water quality of the lake. The fact that we might actually seriously consider tonight approving this project with footings and foundations this far from 20,000 gallons of gasoline, this far, astounds me. Now, I'm not saying that the issues cannot be resolved, but Sam Worley has reached out and the response has been, fire code allows us to be 3 feet away. And no, we're not going to give you the name of our engineer. You can talk through the architect. Okay. We'd hope not to be here at all. But those conversations have not been encouraged, and they need to happen. And they need to happen as to the feasibility, not just before a building permit is issued. The marina has a permanent perpetual easement for the tanks. They're not going anywhere. It's 2 10,000 gallon tanks. They're not in a vault. There's not any wall that would separate them from this property, from this development. They are bedded in gravel. That's it. The proposal in front of you acknowledges they don't know where the tanks are. If nothing else, we got to find out where the tanks are and whether the building needs to be moved back to the east to create a safe separation. We don't know. Sam Worley doesn't know. The applicant doesn't know. Once the snow clears, it won't be hard to answer that question. In addition to the easement, the marina has a lease to this property for the entirety of 2024. So there's no great sense of urgency here. Sam Worley is willing to consider vacating that easement early to allow activity to occur, but only if the issues of critical importance can be addressed. Until then, the marina has a lease to this property for the rest of this year. So we have time to meaningfully address the issues that need to be addressed. The critical issues in our view are, where are the tanks? Can the north building be moved to the east to create a safer separation? Should there be a development agreement to assure us that Proper liability protection and bonding will be in place before excavation starts. These tanks are punctured. That gasoline's in the lake, period, before anybody can do anything about it. So what we're asking is that you table the applications. Hopefully the applicant will be encouraged to sit and meet with Sam Worley and talk about some of these issues. Find out where the tanks are. Look at the issue of whether the north building can be moved east. And reduce, if not eliminate, what I think is a critical risk to the water quality of Payette Lake from a puncture of those tanks during construction. And a management plan doesn't address it. And saying we're going to take all necessary precautions isn't good enough. What are those precautions? We're talking 3 feet. I don't know what excavator is going to want to get in there and excavate footings and foundations 3 feet from 20,000 gallons of gasoline. Now, can the project be done? We think it can be done. And we have no quarrel with the concept of the project or with the design, but not the way it's presented to you and not with the uncertainties that are before you. And so what we're asking is that you table, allow the uncertainties to get clarified, allow the site location to be carefully scrutinized, to just try to assure that we've got some confidence that the building can be constructed without jeopardizing the tanks, and that proper bonding and liability insurance will be in place in case there is an incident. That doesn't seem like too much to ask, particularly when the marina has the property leased for the balance of the year. As I say, we have some time, and we're asking we take that time and we get these questions answered, and then you can act on the shoreline environs and the design review. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Steve. We have anybody else? Okay.
Claudia Delaney, 1303 Mill Road. And I am asking that you do not approve this application. Reiterating some of the things that Mr. Milliman has highlighted. I guess I won't reiterate those as you asked, Robert, so just please listen to what he said. In addition, I want to highlight a few things that to me seem that the project is not ready. It's premature. They do not have a plan for snow storage. All of these things, the whole point of having P&Z and having these regulations is so that the applicant has to show how they're going to do them. So to me, just saying, yeah, I'm talking to Brian, we'll work it out. For those of us that are in that area where snow storage is an issue, that's not a plan. And if you can just get things approved with no plan, I don't think that's appropriate. Second, parking in that area is an issue. And I would just ask the commissioners to consider that these are fairly large units. I think they're 5,700 square feet. So one thing they could do is keep 5 units, but they can make them a bit smaller. But one of our concerns is that they're just going to have all their guests fill up the public parking. And so for us McCall citizens, that is a public amenity. It shouldn't be their private parking lot. That's one of the concerns I have is with places that big, you're probably going to have a lot of guests and they don't have that much parking on site. And so the natural place is for them to just go use the boat parking. So that was something I would just ask you to consider. I've only got 3 minutes. The other thing is on the shoreline environs and all that, there's quite a bit written about not having wall-like structures, either from the water or for people like on our side that we have views of the lake or looking towards the lake or open. On our side of the thing, we're looking at a wall of garages, the 2nd story, and then the 3rd story with the stairways up. And again, if there was some way to still allow them to build, but perhaps have a little bit, either make those stairways bigger or shrink it, but it's very wall looking if Brian, if you pulled that up, but from our end with the garage. And the views they have are actually up high as like where a crow would see it. And you can see this view of like, if you're actually down where we are, these garage fronts are going to be quite oppressive and it will appear like a wall. And so I just ask that you consider that and again, my request is that you reject this. I think this application is premature and not ready. And then one last thing for planners, and I know Michelle's on the line, Mill Road has turned out to be a fantastic pedestrian way. And right now there's no sidewalks, and that actually turns out to really allow people to use it as a pedestrian way. They will walk 3 and 4 across with strollers and bikes. And it's a wonderful amenity because cars automatically slow down. As soon as you put curb and gutter and sidewalk, that tends to be, that's the 2 feet allotted to pedestrians. And now cars start speeding up. So as you're looking at this Mill Road and where everybody's talking about parking and all that, I would, if you haven't spent time on Mill Road in the summer, go hang out there and see how people use that as this really great pedestrian thoroughfare. And I would ask you to keep that in consideration as you look at plans to sidewalk and stuff like that. That's all.
Perfect timing. All right, is there anybody else here in the audience that wishes to comment regarding this application? Okay, is there last call for anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? Okay, with that, we'll close the public comment. Richard, would you like to answer some of the questions?
Chair, members of the commission. Let's touch on some of the other items outside of the fuel tank, and then we'll close with that. As far as the parking is concerned, we've provided 4 parking spaces for the residences themselves. There's 2 in the driveways and 2 in the garages. The downtown core allows for on-street parking to accommodate for our retail and commercial uses. So as a single family residence, each of these do have 4 parking spaces. We are really attempting to mitigate a lot of the, let's just say, elevation concerns with the fact that the statement that was made relative to the building looking like a wall. There's a lot of undulation in the building. There's pronounced balconies. There's lots of fenestration relative to the glass. On the residential side, on Mill Street, there was a question early on by Don Gray that was asking about the actual height. We've reduced the height along the Mill Street side because of the slope of the site. So on the low side of the site, the building appears taller towards the marina, but on the residential side, all of these are just above the 20-foot mark. And then there are some areas where the stairs, which are an exception, allow us to extend above the 35 feet, but it only does it very limited, and a limited height above that by about 2 feet for the stair area. Everywhere else relative to the buildings themselves is well below the 35-foot height limit on the Mill Street side. In terms of access and parking on Mill Street, the intention is not to have any on-street parking on Mill Street. Again, all the driveways would accommodate, and the garages would accommodate the necessary parking for the individual residences. As far as the traffic study, the point made by Morgan, I think, is an important one, because we have these conditions. If these conditions aren't met, then we don't have the entitlement. So allowing us the ability to continue working through some of the very specific things relative to studying access at the marina, those are expensive exercises that really are difficult to continue without knowing that we actually have a project to work through. So understanding that we absolutely have full intention to comply with all of the engineering requirements, we think that the reality that we're providing a better system around this property as a result of this project, I think is something that should be commended, simply because we're making the system better with this project. As far as the exchange around the tanks, we know exactly where the tanks are. They're shown on our site plan. As a matter of fact, the tank as it's shown right now, again, is this rectangle. It actually extends beyond the easement. And if we've so felt like it, we could ask them to remove that part of the tank. We're not going to do that, but the reality is, this is where the tank is located, and it's not within the easement. We are providing all of the appropriate separations that are necessary for code requirements, regulations for construction around fuel tanks that need to be accommodated, and the structure is not imposing any additional impact to the tanks themselves. So again, we have every intention of working with the tank owner to make sure that that issue is resolved, but that's not the issue at hand as far as I'm concerned. What we're here for is the design review portion, and making sure that we're requiring and making sure that we are addressing all of the engineering necessary to accommodate our buildings and our proposed design. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Just to, I guess, answer one of the public question or a couple other questions. And I'm sure there's not, but you're not anticipating any real curb or sidewalk along the mill side at all.
Yeah, there is.
It's not a sidewalk, it's just your driveways, correct?
It's curb and gutter, and then this is sidewalk through.
So there is sidewalk along there. Okay, it didn't look like there was on the picture, but. Yeah, it's not, I guess maybe a little bit of a curb, but it's not seeing any sidewalk on. Yeah, right. No, you had it, Brian, back. Oh, so you have it on that, but not on the artist rendition or the picture of the.
It might not have got incorporated into the rendering. But yeah, there'll be sidewalk around all sides.
Okay. On the tank, since you have the easement showing is 3 foot from the building, correct? As far as the easement.
That's right.
So what's the distance from the actual walls of the tank to the footing?
So we have a site plan. There's a little detail that.
Yeah, I saw that one there, but I don't
Incorporated.
see if it showed the actual distance from the actual tank.
The one that I gave you.
Yeah, the way that I read that was that it was 3 feet from the tank, not 3 feet from the edge of the easement.
We added a detail, just to clarify this little detail over here, Brian. So a 10,000 gallon tank is going to vary in size with diameter and length. This is generally considered the largest size for the size of tank, the gallons of tank that this is. Right now, we have at least 6 feet. We have 5.5 to the sidewalk or the concrete pad that's over the tanks. And then what we believe is that the size of that concrete is actually 12. So there's actually another foot from the edge of that concrete to the tanks themselves. The building structure is basically on a, what are these geopiles that they're like a structural sonotube that goes down into the ground that provides the support for the perimeter stem wall and footing. From that, there are 2 conditions that are analyzed when it comes to the structure itself and the bearing capacity of the soil. And what that says is that from the point of the structure, there's an angle of repose, and that's the understanding of the implied load of the structure on the soil. So load doesn't go this way, it goes down at a 45 degree. So from that point, you can see that even in our worst case scenario, that angle of repose doesn't touch the tank. So anything above that line isn't impacted by the structural load of the building. Everything below that line is. So that diagram basically says exactly what I'm saying is that, or what I have been saying is that the structure doesn't really impose any additional load on those tanks. Excavation will absolutely.
What if that tank is 12 feet wide?
It's not 12 feet wide.
Your drawing says assumed. I'm just curious how you know that for certain.
Because if it's a 12-foot wide tank, then the gallons that are provided in that tank are larger. With that size of tank and the gallons that are accommodated, a 12-foot diameter tank doesn't have the capacity to support the amount of gallons that it would incur.
It could be larger though, right? And still.
If that's the case, then we've got a much bigger problem that the tanks aren't regulated properly.
Do we know exactly what the size of the tanks are?
We do. Yep. We have DEQ reports. Everything is absolutely identified as the size of those tanks, and that is the size of the tank.
And the shape.
I don't have any of those reports in our records, so just for
They're in DEQ.
they exist elsewhere.
They're in Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. And the owner has access to these as well. The owner of the tanks.
As you can see, and on that, it is right across from the entry from the mill court. And that is, I mean, Mill Road is a fairly narrow road. It's, I think, originally designed almost as an alley. So it's not normal width. Do you have special plans for trying to avoid as much as possible construction blocking anything in there?
As far as the construction is concerned, a lot of our access is likely going to come down on the Lake Street side, given that we're working up the property as opposed to down. I would anticipate that during construction, until the curb and the road repair for the engineering work that would occur in Mill Road, that our fence would occur on the property line and everything would be happening from Lake Street up to Mill. So there should not be a tremendous amount of impact on Mill Road until the time comes that road get repaired for the utility work. But once that happens, everything will happen in sight.
So then your cranes will be down on Lake Street?
Assuming there is cranes that are necessary, but the ideal was. Go ahead.
You'll be blocking Lake Street instead of Mill Street.
No, we would be doing the work on site. We shouldn't need to block any roads.
Does you have any of the, I know Morgan had mentioned that stormwater drain line going on the north boundary. Do you have that marked on your plans? Just make sure we got where that is in regards to the building.
We have the engineering drawings that Morgan's reviewed. It has the sewer indicated. It has water. I think there's going to be revisions to that based on comment letter. And we would have to comply with those.
But the storm drain that goes along the north, not the sewer line, but the storm drain.
The storm drain goes along here. We don't know if it's actually on our property or if it's on the adjacent property. We don't know that yet. We won't be able to find that out until the snow melts.
But that could be a substantial change if it's along the property with you on zero line setback.
Along this particular lot 5, is that what you're referring to? Yeah, what we would do is just adjust the size of the building and reduce it to accommodate that.
Okay.
And if anything, it's going to provide more of a separation between us and the existing single family, which we're okay with that if that has to occur. We understand that there's conditions around any infill site like this. There are going to be things that need to be worked through, absolutely, and we're planning to do that.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Richard? Okay, thank you, Richard. Commissioners, any other questions for staff before we close the public comment, or staff has any more information to provide?
Answer any questions you guys have.
I have a question. There's been conversations about the tank owners and also a lease. I believe the city owns the marina and leases it to Mile High. Does the city own the tanks as well, Brian?
Chairman Lance, Commissioner Petty. No, I don't believe we do.
I don't think it's a city lease, is it? It's a
No.
state lease.
State leases the land underneath.
Yes, the Mile High Marina, the part that is above the ordinary high water mark is on city right of way and is leased from the city.
Okay.
Marina underneath the lake is leased via the state.
Okay.
So my question then is, who owns the tanks?
I believe the marina business owns the tanks and is the grantee of the lease and easement agreement. The city is not a party to the easement.
But Steve talked about a lease through 2024 for that piece of ground.
The subject property is currently leased to Mile High Marina to use for parking. The city is not a part of that lease agreement either.
Okay, that clarifies that for me. Thank you.
Brian, earlier you said the height restriction, that was going over the height restriction in 2 minor areas, but it was allowed? Is that what you said? Because it's why?
I will redo the
code.
Yeah, certain things are allowed within that.
Defines building height as building height shall be measured vertically from any point on a proposed building element to the existing grade prior to construction or finished floor elevation after construction, whichever is more restrictive, directly below said point on a proposed or existing building element. The highest to lowest measurement at any given vertical structure line. The handy diagram, and then below the handy diagram, excluded from the height measurement are antennas approved, roof stair access enclosures, projections, cupolas, chimneys up to 10 feet above highest point of the roof surface, steeples, and spires.
Okay, so they're specifically excluded from that. I want to go back to the fuel tanks. Seems like we've had a bit of a discussion here and disagreement of where they're located potentially, and also the size of the tanks. And at the moment, we just don't have any information to actually zero in on the correct answer.
I think that is a correct analysis.
Morgan, in yours, was there, I guess would this been part of your overall engineering review, but there would potentially be some sort of development agreement with the applicant and the lease or the tank owners, or would you be not a party of that? As far as their timeframes of fueling and.
I don't think the city would need to be a party of that. I do have a comment in there that if they need to provide like a vehicular access to the tanks for fueling, that they add it to their plan so that we know where it's being constructed. But I think that's as far as we would need to know.
Would we need anything that says, okay, we'd ask for something in the CCNR so the owners of the buildings are aware that that's going to be happening at times, and at times there's going to be fuel smell, and not to call the city and complain.
That might be a Brian question.
Yeah, I think that would be something potentially as a condition of approval to provide an updated easement agreement with language regarding fueling and also incorporated into their
something that so it's
plan.
And then I know they mentioned this, and I don't know if we've normally any part of our conditions, but like, is this done with the building permit as far as the bonding and stuff with the tank? Do we make sure there is some kind of extra safety or extra precautions happening other than just, okay, it's engineering, or is there something we need to be specifically say we need this extra protection for these tanks?
I think you could add something into like your construction management of the project. And when there's a larger project like this, we usually require a pre-construction meeting with staff and utility providers. So that would be a topic to touch on there. I know the marina has a spill response plan. The city has a spill response plan for the marina. If something were to happen and we're better equipped now, hopefully that never happens, but I don't know how else you would document it if it wasn't in the construction management process. You could probably touch on it in your civil plans and add just like extra notes of caution and design around that and how close you can get to the disturbance of that ground. So they could elaborate on it, I would think, showing some of those limits of disturbance and maybe calling out what kind of equipment and how close you could get to that.
And which brings up another thought. Is there any conditions that DEQ requires when there's construction around tanks?
I am not sure at the moment. I'm sure there are some requirements for that. I'm not sure off the top of my head how large the property is. If it's over an acre, they're required to get a permit from the state anyways for construction for the amount of disturbed area, which that would probably be part of the review in that permit. And they would have to probably disclose that there's a fuel tank nearby. But I don't know for sure if they have any extra requirements.
In order to get some more detail and clarity on some of these uncertainties, how much time does that take?
Or would remanding to not a time certain be an option here?
I was trying to get to that same point. Thank you for clarifying.
The hydraulic model is definitely in the works, and it's actively being worked on at the moment on our side. And I have these questions floating out to our consultants and to the fire department. So that should only be a week or two before we have those final calculations, provided we get all the information we need. And then the traffic conversation's probably pretty simple in the area. And then the stormwater design, that would probably take a few weeks depending on the workload of the engineer. And it'd probably be a week or two to review. But I think there's room for modifications that they can work on.
Locating storm drain and fuel tanks, and that is gonna be done. Snow melt.
Weather dependent.
Stay today.
Yeah. It'll be ready.
Going fast.
Gonna snow again. All right. Any other questions, commissioners? All right.
Left in the public hearing about whether the pedestrian walkways would be public or private.
Oh, that's right. I had that. I forgot about that. So the ones in between the building will be public, so people across the street can cut down through. Okay. Yeah, I forgot I had that on. All right, commissioners, any other questions before we close the public hearing on this item? All right, I make a motion. We close the public hearing.
Second.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait. Oh,
I want to keep it open while you determine what you want to do with it.
are we gonna do deliberations on that?
You can do either.
Okay. Well, in that case,
We have discussed hunting a little bit.
well, yeah, I thought that was gonna go through our deliberations because you want me to open and close, I think. Okay, I withdraw the motion. Very good. So we'll go ahead and have commissioner discussion.
I guess in my mind, it seems like there's still a lot of uncertainties here that I would like to see a little more clarity and details on before feeling comfortable moving forward. You know, what those are is the stormwater plan. I had a note in here about, you know, mitigating possible pollutants. Hydraulic modeling sounds like that's in progress, so maybe not a terrible thing there. But the one that really stands out to me is the risk and the tank locations and the tank size and how all of that plays out. Before I'd be comfortable moving forward, I would like to see some clarity there and some details.
I completely agree with that. I think protecting the lake is crucial. So stormwater design, and we need to see specifics of the gas tank before we can move forward. So yeah, I agree.
Dave?
Yeah. I understand that it's easier for a developer to go forward when he has an entitlement, but there are too many questions. I'm still not clear. So even the lease for the tanks goes away, then where do the tanks go? I mean, there's a lot of questions that I think developer and Mile High can answer for us, or at least clarify. I do have a concern about I understand there's patios and glass, but it is a large mass of a building that looks over the lake. Whether we're ready for mountain modern architecture in the town, I don't know if I feel quite comfortable with that either. So as much as we hate punting, I think it's good in this case.
All right, I'm not sure who commented before. Was that Liz or Dana that already mentioned it? Dana, Liz, your thoughts?
All right, so I think as far as the lease goes, the lease is just for the parking lot portion of the entire property. The easement is what's tied with the fuel tank. So the easement and the fuel tanks aren't necessarily going to go anywhere. So what I captured, and I'm interested in y'all's feedback, if this is everything too much, whatever. Questions that we have are on the hydraulic model, the drainage and the pre-treatment plan, the stormwater protections during construction, some kind of construction management plan to ensure that we know where the tanks are, we know the size of the tanks, we have the records to reflect that in evidence, and the plan of actually protecting those tanks during construction, as well as plan to mitigate the impact to blockage of the public streets, the public right-of-ways, in addition to adding to the design, added protection for the propane tanks and those covers. We need to add a note about sign approval does not happen in this application. We need drawings that reflect the actual plan, and we would like more information on the traffic impacts.
Go Liz.
Very good. One thing I think I would like to see more or learn more about to make sure we knew something, but I'd like to hear or at least see if there's anything that the DEQ requires when there's construction around fuel tanks. I think I would like to encourage as much as we could the applicant and Sam Worley and the tank owners to have some more discussion and hopefully some agreements that they come back with. I think they can. I don't see why they wouldn't, but I would feel more comfortable with that being done in advance, knowing that that's, you know, hopefully an agreement that's already done. And I think a lot what you had, Liz, also kind of falls in with the potential bonding liability, you know, as long as they're under the construction agreement. I think that falls in with there. So with what I'm hearing from everybody, I think we're all in agreement that we would like to see this carried on to, the question would be, would it be able to be done by our next meeting, or would this be something we need to push out farther? I think, I mean, it seems like they're trying to work it pretty good. I think we, unless they state otherwise, we would like, I think we could give it reasonably on or the next meeting. Okay, and the applicant seems to think they could do that, so. I mean, I think we don't have to really give any specifics. I think the applicant and staff know our thoughts and concerns. So I make a motion. Well, any other discussion? Sorry, before I do anything.
I know we don't have a lot of snow, but is 1 month enough to
Oh, that's true, the
get
snow.
information on where that stormwater drain is? Or do we need to wait for more snow?
If we move it to, say, the June meeting, but they're able to complete the documents required in time for the May meeting, are they able to do that? No, we have to do date specific? No. Going pretty fast. They've been plowing that out a little bit. I don't think there's a whole lot of snow there right now.
How's it get scheduled if you remand?
Your man back staff, it gets scheduled as a new public hearing with new public notice.
I have to go through that whole,
It's ready to go.
they gotta have weeks and, I think I'm willing to put it onto the May, and if it gets close to that time, then they can ask for it to be bumped to the following month, correct? Oh, I think with our snow conditions right now, and realistically, they would need to clear off of the tank and if needed, that north boundary line, and they could potentially have that done to, move it over to the other side of the lot, for example, if they need be. But I think it is melting pretty quick. I don't anticipate, hopefully, knock on wood, we don't get too much more real heavy snows. But I think that gives them the option of getting it on the May meeting. If weather conditions aren't allowed, they can always come back and continue it like we have some of the other items over there.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm okay with that. I really want to stress that I would like to see a lot of information return in that meeting.
yes,
And we're not still sitting here with some unanswered questions.
the applicant feels that that's reasonable.
I think that the caveat there is that some of that information is coming from your staff and engineers. So like, we don't have any objection to preparing our own, the information that we're able to provide. But if we get there and that information still isn't available, I feel like that's justifiable in terms of really holding the conditions of approval accountable to the things that staff is asking for, that we address those before we're even able to submit for building permit. That makes sense.
Yeah, we just would have to see kind of what's there before we could
That's
make any
like a
determination.
Yeah.
A little far out.
It's not like we're not going to be
Yeah.
working with Morgan and through those issues as we get up to that point anyway. So
Morgan, do you think there's enough time to get that information back to you, have time for staff to review and have it ready to our packets the week before the meeting?
Packet is a week before the meeting.
Oh.
No.
Is that a week?
Are you getting things late?
To ask that question.
Usually Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday.
So that would be 3 weeks to get.
Yeah, that could be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, with these amount of items, that could be tricky and then have time for you to review. You know what, that might be pushing it. The more I think about it.
I mean, it sounds like that stormwater plan is going to require some effort.
So with that, the June meeting would be the 4th, if I'm looking at this correctly. Right, yeah, 4th. Yeah, I think with a 3-week period and the amount of items, might be wise to go ahead and go with the June 4th. Just to make sure I mean, this is a lot of stuff we want, and it's not just regular building things I mean, obviously that fuel tank is a big item.
Yep.
And we want to make sure we have everything as much as we can. As well as the storm drain, I think, on the north side, because that could not substantially, but it would change the building. So if any other discussion? With that, we will leave the public comment or public hearing open. And I make a motion that we'll continue the design review 2403 and scenic, or excuse me, shoreline 2401 to our June 4th meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. Brian, let's do a roll call.
Lyons?
One moment.
Yes.
Was that shoreline 2401 or 2402?
24. Well, it's design review 2403 and shoreline 2401.
Okay.
So there's actually a discrepancy in the materials.
Yes.
So could we get a?
Which one do you have?
confirmation one?
I see
Number 3.
shoreline 2402.
On the cover page.
No, it's in. Motion.
I've got on the agenda and the cover page 2401. 2401 is correct. Yeah, I see a shoreline 2402 later in our agenda. So, yes, the motion is correct. So Brian, finish roll call.
Chairman Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinzer,
Yes.
Commissioner Rock,
Yes.
Commissioner Pa,
Yes.
Commissioner Petty.
Yes.
All right, that motion is approved. We'll continue it to our June 4th, or June 4th meeting. All right, and then on the next item, design review 2404, shoreline 2403, and scenic route 2401 has requested to be continued to May 7th meeting. Make a motion that we continue that item to the May 7th meeting.
Second.
Oh, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item, design review 2405, shoreline 2402, and scenic route 24 cut off. 24 something. We added that.
So many clerical errors in
In this one,
Shoreline 1 and 2 are swapped.
okay, so it's design review 2405, shoreline 2402, and scenic route 2403. That also has been requested to be continued to the May 7th meeting. So I make a motion that be moved to our May 7th meeting.
Second.
Oh,
Still a question.
Bill, I guess we have a question.
If I missed the scenic route number on the agenda, but we got it in the newspaper, the mailing, and the posting, how bad are we?
So let me make sure I understand. It was correct in the post in the newspaper posting, not on the agenda.
Correct.
And it's just the number?
Yeah.
And this is which one? The DR 2404?
05.
05, the Warren wagon?
Yep. Could I print off a new copy, go and post it upstairs on the board, and then we recognize that I fixed it?
No, not after the start of the meeting. You guys, well, it looks like you wanted to.
We're going to continue it to the May meeting anyway.
I mean, if it was properly noticed in the newspaper, I mean, fine. We know which one we're talking about. Continue it to the May meeting and get it right on that agenda.
Okay, so I think we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Now we are down to conditional use permit 2401 for 106 East Park Street. I make a motion, we open the public hearing on this item.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let me get that. So with that, the Ignite Idaho Resource Center, I'm not sure who's speaking. Oh, thank you. Your name and address and let us know what you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is this
Oh.
for the Park Place
Yes.
office space? I'm gonna have to recuse myself. That is my office location. This is Dana.
Okay. Noted. Okay. We'll give your name and address and
My name is Tracy Jamison and my address is 1195 Sampson Trail. This is Shiloh Riker, 217 Colt Street, New Meadows. I'm the executive director at Ignite Idaho Family Resource Center in McCall. And she's the administrator. We are just here to talk about the conditional use permit, Street Plaza. Not sure exactly.
We were awarded grant funding from the Idaho Workforce Development Council. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to strengthen families and prevent child abuse in the West Central Mountains of Idaho. And through the Workforce Development Council grant, they are helping us not only pay for this CUP, but provide childcare for the workforce in our area. Now, ours is an interesting partnership. Our partnership is with the whole of the Park Place building, accommodating parents in this workforce who often have to bring their kids to work or have unreliable work schedules. And we know there's a childcare shortage in our area. I'm waiting on numbers from the West Central Mountains Economic Development Council before I start quoting numbers because they're putting a new one out in the next few months. But the last one said we were several hundred childcare seats short in the West Central Mountains. We are not only fulfilling a need in our workforce, we're fulfilling a need in general in our community. And so we will be using that to provide a childcare space of no more than 12 at a time. We also are looking to bring in a drop-in program in which parents who often are mostly in our building can drop off their children for 1 to 2 hours to meet with their counselor, any other mental health professional, their chiropractor, their recovery counselor. So all of those needed resources and having a safe place for those children to go. Otherwise, those children are going to those appointments anyway in the building. So we're looking to just provide a much needed resource. We know this building has previously been used for education, but has not been used specifically for childcare. So with that, we will stand for any questions.
all right, commissioners, any questions?
So it's mainly for employees, children of, is that correct?
But also, you know, if we do the wellness drop-in, it would be maybe St. Luke's. Moms right now are taking their kids and they're having to get imaging done and it's very difficult for that to be taking place. So we want to have that gap in services for the parents to be able to drop them off for a couple hours so they can go get their needs met.
What is your planned hours of, oh, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Does the cap of 12 include drop off or would that be in addition to?
Yeah, we're planning on just having 12 total
At any given point.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And Chairman Lyons, I believe your question was our operating hours?
No, I saw it in here. I was gonna say, I thought I saw that in here, but then I found it. I know in the past with the school, they kind of went down to that little park area down up the alleyway. What is your anticipation for any outside play area?
That is exactly where we would do it. They have approved that the building owner has allowed us to have that space. And that was worked in the grant as well.
We will be installing fencing as a condition of using that space. So it will be fenced and secure. Need to pursue any permitting, et cetera, for the fence itself, but it will not just be open. I know previously it has been an open area when it was used as a playground. It will not be that way.
It's approved.
You'll go further with that and do
Yes,
that one.
if it's not approved, we still want to have the structure there for the kids to play. But we would love to have it fenced just for added security.
Keep them in there. And then obviously you understand the requirements of getting through the health department and their approvals and.
Yes, and we're already working with Idaho Stars. They've already been out numerous times. Everybody's ready.
We're just waiting on the.
So we have the fire inspection. I mean, everything's pretty much.
So the city inspection, but also the health department inspection, everything required there. And you're gonna do all ages?
Yes. all the way up to.
Up to, well, yeah, I mean, not 18-year-old, 18-year, I got a couple here. That one.
18-year-olds, to 25 that,
I need to
you know,
really
need
best
some
stand.
extra help, but that's for our other services that we offer.
I mean, what part of the building are you? planning on?
So we're upstairs. We have 218, 220, 222, 228, and then 227.
Is that the same one the school had in the back there that enters from the back and parking in the back? So they're not entering off the front area there. Okay, so the back one that's,
People do park out there because they are services in the building, like chiropractor, counseling, treatment. So yeah.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, staff report.
Alrighty, thank you. Please permit 2401, for a childcare facility, at 106 East Park Street. Correctional building. Item was determined by myself to be routine in nature, as far as conditional use permits go, so we waive the pre-application neighborhood meeting requirements. This application was submitted on January 19th. There was an unfortunate snafu in the posting, so it was not on the last meeting agenda. So we did it again this month. It's probably posted on paper on 15th, 18th, and posting on 15th. You guys are a recommending body to call city council, which point or a hearing will be set at a future date. Open the public hearing, had application. Now, a bit after your public comment and more information, then you'll close the public hearing, deliberate, and make a recommendation. This is a childcare facility of up to 12 children is the proposed use. It's within an existing facility. They're just looking to enlarge it. Currently zoned R8, future land use identified as medium density residential. So in the R8 zone, childcare center is identified as a conditional use. There is specific language in the comprehensive plan, particularly in the housing section, for providing additional childcare facilities. There is no change to the site or existing structure proposed at this time. Therefore, it is likely to be harmonious with the neighborhood. It needs to be not detrimental to health, safety, general welfare. Again, nothing indicates that there will be detrimental effects. No substantial environmental consequences to land or waters within planning jurisdiction. There's nothing indicating any environmental consequences since they're not doing any work. Not create excessive additional public costs for public facilities and services, and will not be detrimental to economic welfare of the community. There is no public cost addition anticipated. Be adequately served by essential public facilities and services, which it already is. Not involve uses, activities, processing materials that will cause unreasonable production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors, or other forms of pollution. It may create a little additional traffic due to additional children being picked up. Maybe a little more noise with more children in the area, but that's about it. Not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of an important natural, scenic, or historic feature. There is nothing of that nature known to be impacted. Beyond a site of sufficient size to accommodate the proposed use, which it's already an existing building on site. Then have minimal negative economic impact on the neighborhood or surrounding community, which there is no reason to anticipate that occurring. The one comment I had, staff discussion, the application indicated there was a circulation plan for pickup and drop off, but no actual diagram or anything was like that was provided. So prior to going to city council, we'd like to get that into the record so that is documented. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioner, any questions for Brian?
By a circulation plan, you just mean traffic flows?
Yeah, how they pick up and drop off kids.
Yeah.
If they're all doing it at once, or if it's kind of.
Well, you got alleyway coming in both sides, plus the end of the building, they can come around, plus park in front of the building. My granddaughter went there, and so pretty familiar with the previous one. So it seemed to flow, but obviously I can get you a bit more idea of the guidelines for 'em. And like I say, I know the school had a lot more kids than, well, I think they were 40 or
80,
so,
yeah.
or 80,
We left that space, we had 60.
60. Okay, so there was a lot more. I think 12 is very minimal, especially if it's going to be sporadic on times and it's not going to be 12 all at once. And so, yeah, I can't see much of a major impact with that amount. And so if they expanded, would they have to come back if there was over an expansion for higher? I mean, not that it would do a whole lot, but.
The proposal is for 12 and there is a condition of approval that the occupancy is 112, so they would be coming back through.
They have to come back through if they were going to expand on it. Good. Any other questions for Brian? Nope. Morgan, I don't know if there's really anything here for you to comment on.
Correct. I didn't have much to comment on system engineering approval.
Yeah. So any other questions for Morgan that doesn't have anything? So, all right. With that, this is a public hearing, so I open up the public comment. Is there anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment regarding this application? And if you're on the phone, you may need to hit *6. Anybody online or on the phone that wishes to comment? There is nobody here to comment. So with that, we will close the public comment. And don't have that. We don't need to bring the applicant back up for any other questions as far as rebuttal or response. Commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant before we close the public hearing? I think this one's pretty cut. It's the use that's been happening there in the past. It's even a more reduction of a use that's already been happening there. So other than I think what Brian has in his, so, okay. Well, with that, I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. I think that was ayes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, public hearing's closed. Again, this one pretty good. I mean, other than the conditions of approval and what Brian's asking as far as the plan, they already know they need to get the various permits from the county or county, but it's county health department and this fire department inspection. So that's all within there. So.
Yep. No.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of conditional use permit 2401. Is that correct? 2401 to the city council with staff conditions of approval.
Second.
Excuse me. We have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, that's right. Dana recused. Yep. Let me wait for more. Okay, all opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved. Just continue working with staff on those couple items. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. We'll go to other and signs. Out of that. Oh, let's see. Somewhere I was going to ask you about. I can't remember seeing it come through. Where was that? Darn it. I will have to bring that up another time. So no signs. Upcoming meeting agenda.
It's also, sandwich board season is fast approaching. So if and as you see them, please email me incessantly so that I can play whack-a-mole. Yay.
Yeah, where was it? Darn it. Oh, well. So with the upcoming meeting agenda, this couple that's on there doesn't include, or does that include the ones we continued?
This is not including the ones that were continued.
Okay, so that's some. So therefore design reviews at this point and the PD, that's the storage facility right on the edge of the city or the impact zone, correct? The one we've already preliminary.
There was a pre-app on it.
Pre-app on that one, okay.
And there's also the two subdivision PUD applications that were heard it in March, but continued to make.
Oh, okay, so stuff that's even farther back.
They're gonna be coming back.
Okay,
The storage facility, is that the one next to the airport?
no,
No?
that's the one next to like that new one that was just built off the highway.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, everything's kind of close.
Well, yeah, you're right there.
No.
Wasn't there one that was right next to adjacent to the hangars though?
Yes,
Highway?
that one died.
Yeah, that is right across from Cron.
Yeah.
And that we had to.
Yep.
Road thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that one. So, okay. Well, since Tony's not here, I make a motion, we adjourn at 6:51.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy spring. Happy till Wednesday and it snows.
I know. Till it gets cold.